A lady on my road, his sister died and somebody was just using his meeting. His sister loved animals, so they didn't know. She wanted to get into the shelter. So you can't just get it. She wanted to go for food stuff. They didn't put it in there.
If you would put it in the general fund where it does go to food next year, because I know I asked usually, is there anything you just say for food, and you would decide for and the problem with food, that carries out, is the more donations they get for food, the less money they put.
1 o'clock, I'll call the meeting of the
Yes, food department.
together.
Yes.
Everyone should have had a copy of the minutes, either by email prior to the meeting or handed out beforehand. Is there a motion to approve minutes of the May 4, 2023 meeting?
Second.
Okay, you've heard a motion and a second. Any questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no. Motion carried. The next item, you should have an addendum. Should have received an addendum beforehand or just prior to the meeting. Changing item 3A1 to read as follows. Action to approve consideration of cat room addition. Proceeding to next steps, including but not limited to approvals by county property and finance committee. In other words, there are a number of steps that have to be gone through for this project to be completely approved, but apparently we're at the next step now to move it out of this committee, if you're ready to do that. Would anyone care to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second to Mr. Raven's motion?
Second.
Mr. Hoser has seconded. I'll open it for discussion. Does anyone have any comments? Mr. Wedrick, did you want to?
No, we just needed to get this here, like you said, it's a process, and this is joint management, so this would be the first step. So if they approve it here, we can move on. If it's not approved, then plan B.
We talked about this project in some detail at the last meeting, including next steps, the budget, legalities of approving the actual construction plan, that type of thing. Has anything changed in any significant manner on any of those regards, so far as anyone present knows?
No, we were trying to get, some estimated costs and everything from Tony Lumber and everything, but they're not going to do anything until we have more detailed plans. And so we can't get more detailed plans if it's never been approved in the first place. So like I say, this is starting that process.
Mr. Raven?
Terry, someone from Tony Lumber, someone gonna sit down with you folks, because look at last meeting, you had a bunch of different little things, you wanted a little door or a little window, and
They looked at, it was given to them, and they just said, we're not doing anything more until you have more detailed plans and everything, so we're going to have to get, an engineering thing. But again, we can't move forward on anything unless it gets approved, that the project is approved to begin with. So there's been nothing more. Tony Lumber will not give us an estimate or anything because there aren't concrete plans, and so like I say, this is moving along the thing, but we gotta get approval first.
I have a question, if I may ask. Would it help you if I put in writing and gave it to your group or the other groups that I am willing to donate a certain amount of money, as verification that you really would have the money? You can do that.
I guess it would be more likely to help than hurt. Mr. Taylor?
I guess at some point, I would assume that the county board and the city council are gonna have to approve this, even though it's paid for, it's still a project, you know,
Right.
and I would think both entities would have to approve this, am I right?
I would think. so,
Yes, but again, I'll repeat, we gotta start, it's gotta start here. If you turn it down, then all the other stuff you're talking about is meaningless. We're trying to get going, and if it's not approved here because it's a joint thing, then there's no further discussion needed about all the other approvals and everything else. It's not approved.
May I ask one more question? At the last committee meeting, Terry was talking about the request for qualifications to try to find engineers. I don't know what the process is for that, but can that be done? You know, if you guys, you know, agree to send it on to the next finance or whatever committee, do we have to wait for that approval before we could put out some requests for engineering, you know, to find out how much it could cost? I don't know the procedure, and I'm wondering if you guys know, or what would be the best way to go.
Yes, I think it has to be approved
It's gotta be.
here, otherwise there's no sense of getting an engineer or getting anything, cause then it's.
Well, I mean, if they approve it and then it
If they
keeps
approve it, yep, then we
going
go to
on,
next
then what
steps.
would be the next step is kind of
Well,
my question.
It would go through,
Finance.
property and then finance. Finance, the only reason it has to go through finance is because it's more space, it's gonna increase operating expenses. But we're not hiring more staff or anything like that.
So it's my understanding that it doesn't need to go through property or finance yet. All this committee needs to do is authorize them to put an RFQ out, because there's zero fiscal impact to doing that. And then once we get the responses to the RFQ, then it needs to come back to the respective committees to sign off on, do we actually wanna proceed? Is my understanding. Randy, do you think?
I would agree, yeah.
Okay.
So, question, how do you get an RFQ, I mean, you send it out, how do you get a quote if you don't have a design? Nobody's gonna say, oh yeah, this is what it's gonna cost, they have no idea what it looks like, what the materials, all the rest of that. So I think,
Is the RFQ for an architect?
Yeah, they need to get a cost to
Right.
design plans first.
That's what the RFQ is for, to get someone to design it and get costs. But we can't do that.
so they're gonna design it and there's no charge to that unless it goes.
Then I don't.
No,
They
I
would
think
be
we
charged.
would pay for the
Right,
plan.
that's my point.
Yeah.
My point is, how do you get plans if you haven't got any, if you haven't got a finance or you haven't got any?
No, the RFQ is to just gauge interest and get a quote on, if we do the plans for your shelter, we'll charge you $5,000, $10,000, whatever. Then finance
Okay, so
would
you're
need to
not
sign
asking-
off on spending that
You're
money.
not asking for a quote on
No,
the cost of the building then, you're just asking for a quote on what it's gonna cost, put together the plan, and give them a quote.
Like engineer drawings,
Right,
Yes.
that's what I'm asking,
Yes.
so the quote isn't for the building, okay.
That probably wasn't exactly the motion and second that were made here, with
Right.
people that made
Change it.
those here to retract them and restate them.
I retract mine.
Makes sense. You
Yes.
seconded?
Mhm.
Would you care to remake it, Mike?
Well, my motion should be that, put out the RFP for engineering and design,
okay,
that's it.
so
For the animal shelter.
the Q stands for qualifications, if that's where the confusion is coming in. Okay,
Just keep it simple,
Do you wanna second that? Is everyone comfortable with the revised motion and second? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, no? Motion carried. The next item on the agenda
I think so.
is to review a quote for paving access and parking areas at the animal shelter if we have those.
I met with Scott Jones yesterday, he's gonna give me a quote yet, but it's in the process.
Is there any, Mr. Reynolds?
Question, when would this quote be good for, if,
Two thousand twenty-three.
okay, if they're going
it's
to
approved.
put an ad or cat removal or whatever on the end of this, I assume that's gonna have some kind of an impact on the cost of the quote, unless it's a square foot.
It'd be just a square foot, I'm assuming.
It could be adjusted.
I would assume so.
And you, hey, Gary, you'll make sure that they're aware of that addition, so we get the drainage going right.
Correct.
We don't wanna run back into the building, you know, that kind of thing. Cause you might not know we're gonna have a new addition.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Will do.
Mr. Woodward, Ms. Fleming, Ms. Wilk, Mrs. Wilk, do we have money in the budget for paving? Is there money available for paving?
That request was put in for ARPA funds, and I believe that is in the ARPA.
We'll just need a couple of seconds to look.
Well,
Those
that's
ARPA
being,
funds are on hold.
Right, but, some of them were approved last fall.
well, that's being searched. I'll just note relative to the library that the proposals for heating, ventilating, and air conditioning work have been delayed until June 7th. So it'll be a few days before we have those in hand and hopefully, select a vendor for that work. I believe that Mr. Cater and the library director, I forwarded our builder's comment to you on the fact that we're just waiting in line for a restart on the work at the library. Okay, back to the question about funding for paving at the end.
The county did not allocate ARPA funds for the paving of the animal shelter.
So, in the event that we, even in the event that we have a paving proposal we'd like, there's no funding identified to cover it.
I don't have oversight over the animal shelter budget, I don't know what's.
There's not that much in there for that, no. So we'd have,
That's probably a good thing, Jamie, because we don't know what it costs.
Right.
You know what I mean, how can you put a cost in for ARPA funds if you don't know what it costs?
We'll go ahead and try to get the costs in, but I guess we're all in agreement that there isn't funding identified yet. Everybody,
Could I ask another question? If you're going to pave the animal shelter, might it not be better to wait until we see about the addition and where the addition's going to be? And, you know, if you're gonna be putting in some kind of a foundation and drainage and all that, it might be good to do that before, or at least that section got paved or something,
sure.
in my humble opinion. Anyway,
That
sorry.
raises a question for me too. I was out there last evening and noticed, it was actually called to my attention, checked the overhead garage door on the east end of the building, doesn't seem to have a ramp to it. So the shelter truck couldn't be driven in there as it currently stands.
Mhm.
Am I correct that garage space is full of equipment anyway at the present time and would not be able to accommodate the truck?
At the shelter?
Yeah.
That's full of cats.
that's full of
Yeah,
cats.
it's full of
That's where
cats.
the cats are, that's why we're trying to get the addition, of
Yeah.
the cats out of there.
Thank you very much for clarifying. I just don't go inside and didn't like
That's where the poor cats are living.
Good thing you didn't raise the door.
It's just for storage. And it's storage.
Oh.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Somebody just asked me a question here, somebody within earshot asked, would it possibly be less expensive to convert the current garage into a permanent cat room and build a separate garage?
Well, okay, so the garage where the cats are is actually also storage. So it's not quite big enough because we have more cat cages. There's no plumbing in there, there's no windows in there, so that's why the idea was to build an addition on the other side to where we could add windows and ventilation and, you know, all that stuff, so it actually works for the cats. And then that room, which is I guess a garage, I thought it was a storeroom. Half of it's gonna be converted into a, sick room, cause there is no sick room there for the cats. Right now I have sick cats and baby kittens and pregnant cats and other cats all in one room, which is not ideal. So I guess I would have to say no on that, cause it's really not even a garage right now. Like, cause we have kennels in there, we have food in there, if it,
Was that the original intention for it?
I don't think so. But you can't put the food outside, cause then you'll have rats. So it's just, there's really not enough room for, if a garage was added actually as a garage, you know, for some equipment and then the vehicle, but that room still needs to be storage for like food, and I still need a space to put sick animals. So it's kinda
Okay.
a conundrum, I guess.
I think anything would help, but I think.
Anything would help,
but
yes.
What they're trying to do is look for the long haul, probably.
Well, in this cat room, you saw the diagram before. I mean, it'd be more convenient for the public to come in and look at the cats and pick them up and see them, play with them, and hopefully that would increase the adoption rate and everything like that too. So right now, you go on this little, there's no windows in there at all.
And there's not really, it's very
Ventilation
dusty.
isn't good either.
But, I mean, we just got 12 cats in the last week, so they're all, you know, they're just throwing, I got a cat in the laundry room, I got cats. So it's not ideal for them, and it's hard to adopt them when they're sitting back. And when you bring people back there, they have to go past the impound, and they gotta go and they look at these cats in the storage room where there's dust and there's food and there's litter and there's, so it's just not ideal for the cats. And I think if the public who is making most of these donations comes into a nice bright area where these cats are for adoption, I think it's more pleasing, it's more, you know, friendly for the cats, they don't get stressed out as much.
How long do you typically keep the cats?
Well, as far as I know, there is no time limit. So some of them stay as long as they're healthy, friendly. Obviously, I don't, keep animals that are not adoptable, and by that means either they're sick, where you can't fix them, or they're aggressive. But there's really no time limit there, and we don't have that many. I think there's one cat that's been there maybe a year. The rest of them, they go fairly quickly, but, there's nothing in writing that states that there's a time limit for the cats.
I don't wanna belabor the discussion per se, but was the number of cats that are brought into the shelter not anticipated adequately prior to
Probably.
construction of the current facility, or
Probably,
wondering why the inadequacy?
I don't know, I wasn't here for it, it's very small. The dog space isn't adequate either, but I'm not even talking about that. Probably it would be adequate if there was actually enough rooms for what you're trying to do, but as it stands, the adoption room has 8 cages in it. There's 40 cats there, maybe 45. And most of the cats are for adoption, but then you have the cats that just come in that have to be spayed and neutered or treated, you know, whatever you have to do with them, they can't go up there. So they stay in the back, but I have cats in the back that are available for adoption, but I have nowhere to put them up front. So I have 16 cats up front right now that are available for adoption. And I probably have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 other cats that are available for adoption that are in the storage room. And then there's probably 10 plus that are not spayed or neutered, too young, that are also back there.
I think, well, what I heard, again, I wasn't here involved when they built it or anything, but I think it came down to, they had so much money, they fought for so long to do it, so they had X number of dollars, and that's how much it was built. So I've heard from a lot of people that it was built too small to begin with. But again, that's just what I've heard, I wasn't involved in it, but again, it comes down to money.
You know, since Dawn started, it's been just tremendously better out there. She uses every bit of space that she thinks she can use, and That's my opinion, I think she's doing a fantastic job out there, using all the space that she's got available. I guess, let me ask you guys this, I don't know, so that's what I'm asking. So all this money is pretty much donated, can they just go out and get quotes, and once they get the quotes, can they come back to you guys in a month or so and just ask for approval, and then it goes to, will it have to go to finance after that, I guess?
It should follow whatever established process there are for all county departments.
I guess I didn't know since the money was pretty much all donated.
How much of this money is donated, Terry? I mean,
For what? The
For
original,
whatever's being done,
for the proposed
yeah,
addition?
sure.
I think we have approximately 100 and maybe 45,000.
Okay, let me ask a builder, can you build what you saw, John, with those numbers?
Last time I wrote down 300,000 for a ballpark, so I'm guessing you've got about half. That's just a guess, we don't have plans or anything, there's no material list or anything, but I'm guessing it's about half.
That's my
Which is a
concern.
great start, but
Oh, yeah.
you know, prices of everything have gone wild in the last couple of years, so, yeah, 145 doesn't get you very far anymore. But, again, that takes a good chunk out of it, so.
The only reason I ask that is because we can't be operating on the assumption that somebody else is gonna give us all this money. The city and the county are both gonna have to kick money in. When the last one was built, they had the plans drawn up before they put the numbers together. They put the numbers together, and then I remember the discussion, argument, whatever you wanna call it, at City Hall over percentages, over what the amount was that was going to have to be spent, and it's, yeah, the money's not here right now. And I think the board needs to realize that that's gonna come from somewhere. We don't have money for the blacktopping, we don't have money for this, that, and the other thing, but I think we gotta know that that's what we're facing.
But until we have plans done and we can at least start on a plan, we've got no idea what it's gonna cost, so we need to start somewhere. You know, if we've got a good chunk of it donated, that's a good place to start, then we'll find out what we need. And if we don't have money for it, then we'll talk about it then, but.
And more fundraising can be done. We haven't done any kind of advertising or anything for more fundraising for the new edition. So I know that Fractus is gonna do more fundraising, and I'm sure that, you know, when you put it out there to people, that hopefully you get the ball rolling and we can start getting, but like we said, we need approval to get a quote, to get people to look at stuff and tell us what it's gonna cost us before we can, cause then you can go out there and say, okay, this is our goal, you know, $400,000, this is what we need, and then you start fundraising.
What was the cost of this original unit?
I think the original is about, what I have been told, is 600,000.
Yeah, it's over 6.
That 2/3, that 200,000 was donated, and the other 400 was between city and county.
And we have 140-some thousand now, so we haven't even started fundraising. So, I mean, hopefully,
Well, like John said, the costs have gone up, but, I mean, the size of that building, and we're only putting on a 20 by 40 addition. I wouldn't think that would be half the cost of the brand new building that we did however many years ago. Like you say, costs have gone up.
We don't know at this point, it's,
Right.
you know, I don't even know if it's worth, you know, talking about it yet until we get a plan together,
Right.
so we need to get the plan first.
Okay, I'd like to call the question then, I think, because we have several other items on the agenda. So, you've all heard the motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no? Motion carried. Is there anything else relative to the animal shelter that, you need to be thinking about? If not, moving on to the library. Does anybody have any input there?
I guess I kinda wondered about the mold remediation there, if that's a process,
Well, the way the quote was.
timeline there.
The way the quote was, set up was, they had to do Fritz and the library at the same time. So, I guess I'm waiting on, Fritz approval to get the library done.
Question then, this quote going to include, I mean, if you got mold, chances are good, especially in a finished off building, there's gonna be mold behind the sheetrock as well as front, whatever, in other words, not just what's out in front. And the other thing is that mold is caused by a condition, too much moisture, whatever. This quote that we're getting, what all does that include? Is it just hopefully kill all the mold, or is it to deal with putting the sheetrock back on after the problems are solved and after the source of the moisture is gone and whatever? What do these quotes include?
I guess I sent you the 11-page quote and the 4-page report there, pretty much says what they're gonna do, locations, everything, but, it sounds like to me it's just surface mold and air mold, basically. So they're gonna scrub the air, they're gonna clean the surfaces, it doesn't, there's no really sheet rock that has it, it's on the ceiling tile and the vents and, all that, they're cleaning the vents, they're cleaning the upstairs of that room there, which I think a lot of that is 5R stuff from before.
Oh, you're talking about Dahlbergs? Right, the 5R stuff, you're talking about Dahlbergs?
Dahlstrom.
I just wanted to go ahead.
In the library, I think it's just more surface mold and air mold, according to what the report said, pretty much.
Okay,
I
so
think
then,
that there's some concern that when that window comes out where it was flooding, that there's gonna be a ton of mold behind there, because when they tore off the front, there was, a ridiculous amount of mold and mildew, so.
I don't think they took, did they take a sample where they're gonna rip that window? I don't think they.
Yeah,
did they?
that's where we took them to start with.
Cause it was on the main window too, was where they took the sample on the water side, right?
Yeah.
If you clear the surface, Gary, and you clear the, the surface mold and then the mold that's in the air, where is it coming from? You know what I mean? Wouldn't you wanna get to the source?
I would agree, I don't know where it's coming from, to be honest with you, from the library.
Yeah, well, no, but I mean, otherwise you have to have this person come like the service master, come every 3 months and do whatever they have to do. You know, I think you almost gotta get to the root of the problem, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've been over there for meetings where we're gonna take a towel, wipe everything off so we sit on the meeting, but I mean, that was a couple of years ago, but the big thing is, you need to know where it's coming from.
And I know that down at the basement of the library, where the mold is in the sink area, that was from the sink basically leaking.
Yeah, I'm looking at that.
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of fixed now, it just needs to be remediated. And then, I think the front, I'm not for sure, but I think the front by the water side, I think that was more condensation and maybe at one point leaking into the window, but, where you guys are gonna replace the window, I guess I don't know exactly where that's, I assume it's coming from the wall or the roof.
Well, before we decide on what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it, and who's gonna do it, we should have the person come and tell us what he's gonna do, you know what I mean? So in the future, we don't have to keep revisiting it.
I would think the contractor that's gonna do the repair work would probably have to open it up, I guess, and see, so you can see where it's coming from.
I assume that you will be, on top of that procedure and have some conversation while it's in process.
I guess I'd have to be, you know.
And be able to report back to us about what was done to, reduce the likelihood of reoccurrence.
Does that come with some kind of warranty that they'll test it again in 3 months and what we paid for it, but there's still mold there at that time?
I guess,
You know, the original
I
contract.
can give you this quote right here, it's the 11-page quote. And then,
A lot of that mold developed due to a lack of air circulation in that basement, especially on that west end over there. There's a closet, and I know you looked at that, Marty, we had ventilation, new ventilation put in, and I think it seems to help the problem, so.
Ventilation's part of it, but still, if there's moisture there, I mean, mold is everywhere, mold is in this room. You might not see it, but it's here, and you're not gonna see it, this mycotoxins that they talk about, you'd have to eat a ton of it in order to really have it impact you, unless you've got asthma, HIV, any number of respiratory problems. problems. That's my concern, is if it's going to be dealt with, it needs to be killed. You can't just say, well, we got all the stuff off we can see, so therefore it must be good. If you can see it, it's probably somewhere else. That's my concern.
It looks like they're gonna remove a bunch of ceiling tiles and replace them, and if that's where the mold is physically located, if you get what has the mold on it out, then you've got less of it in there.
We got less of it, but mold still grows.
Right.
And it grows like crazy, so if it's still there, the thing is, mold is everywhere. It's not just a matter of, well, we got rid of what we can see, so therefore. Anyway.
I guess the only reason I, brought this to your guys' attention is because I was told about it, so once I heard about the mold, I don't wanna just not do anything about it, so that's why I got the quotes. I mean, this has been, well, we've known about the mold in the library for quite a while, right?
Yeah, over 2 years before I started.
Yeah, before I started, and then, I think we found out, I think Todd Dahlstrom, emailed, Ashley February 1st and told her about it.
Well, we appreciate it. Anything else relative to the library? If not, we'll move on to, other maintenance items. Have you had any opportunity, Gary, to look at the need for ice and snow shields at various facilities?
Yep, I'll go over kind of, since our previous meeting here, what we've done. At the animal shelter, we fixed the ruts, graded the area, cleaned up snowplow debris, mowed 3 times, weeded the whole area 3 times. I took the highway commissioner there, measured up blacktop. The library, reached out to the bidders and told them the bid due date was, later. Met with the contractor there to go over the HVAC again. EDF, we reattached lower and upper gutters. Took highway commissioner there to look at blacktop area, fixed 2 leaks. Dowdy Road building, we mowed 1 time, graded area and filled in ruts. Enterprise Center, we mowed 3 times, snowplow cleanup, fixed ruts and graded, trimmed trees, AC unit repair. Gates building, took highway commissioner, Fritz building, took highway commissioner there, checked on blacktop area, checked out loading dock area, that, the chair asked me about, informed Dahlstrom about last meeting about the mold. Mowed 2 times, gates, we mowed 3 times, snowplow cleanup, fixed ruts, Menards run for the gutters, visitor center, we've had some IT work done there. Stopped in and asked about the construction going on, tried to give that a push. I guess that's what we've done since the previous meeting.
Thank you. Could you provide those notes or a copy of those to Jill?
Yeah, I
So
can,
she can attach them to the minutes.
I can add them to that
Thank you.
page, yeah. I guess on the inventory of the exterior stuff, I went through every building, and they're basically gonna need, just like you said, like the Westlake ones, small steel roofs or canopies or ice breaks or, ice guards. The animal shelter, it seems to be okay. The library though, the library would have 4 AC units that should be protected. They have 7 rooftop exhausts that should, be protected. Visitor center seemed to be okay. Fritz had a natural gas, that needed to be protected. There was 2 electrical panels that needed to be protected, 5, roof exhausts that needed to be protected. One overhead door, that probably should be protected because the snow and ice kinda comes off of it and could injure a tenant or anybody. There's 3 entry doors that probably should be protected. When I was there, I looked at that, south loading dock, that probably should get, probably re-steeled, it's pretty beat up. And that, it's like probably a 30-foot sectional wall that probably.
Would you be able to get photos of each location?
Yep.
And then, seek out preferably from a couple of local vendors that might be able to fabricate some of what might be useful there.
And a lot of that, like the roof, the ice guards and brakes, I mean, we could, if we got time, we could put them on, no problem.
Put them on or fabricate them and put them on, both.
Yeah, we could do it, but if we had time, that's the thing.
I think Tony used to actually do that type of work himself, fabrication work, whether he still does, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's not difficult, it's just, you gotta find somebody to do it.
And the Gates building has a natural gas, that should be covered. 2 overhead doors that need some attention for that. 8 entrance doors, 2 electrical panels, 16 side exhaust, 2 AC units. Enterprise has 4 AC units, 3 doors, a natural gas meter that has one on there right now, but it's pretty chintzy and small. It's not quite big enough for what's needed. And then there's some roof exhausts up there. For some reason I don't have a number on that, but there's some roof exhaust up there. ADF has 2 ground units, 1 electrical panel, 1 door, and 4 roof exhaust. Dowdy Road has 13 roof exhausts, and Jez Road building should be alright.
Thank you. If you could, just continue to make progress on that, I'd like to think that maybe by the end of summer, we'd have a couple of proposals in hand and, at least be able to get the most critical ones done before winter comes again. These are all safety items, and they really kinda need to float to the top of the list, just like the mold remediation is. So, thank you for that, keep working on it. Anything else for maintenance? From committee members, staff people? If not, moving on to the ADF plant. Was there any opportunity to talk with Rusk County Highway about paving the access to the dumpster area there?
Yeah, I took them out there, yesterday and we talked about it, and I was able to find the quote that, Scott M. shed,
Okay.
whatever, and I asked him if he'd honor it, and he said pretty much he thinks he could honor it. It might be a 5 to 10% plus or minus, but, he said it should be pretty close. And I asked him if it would be able to get it done this year, and he said yes.
Yeah, do you recall what that quote was?
I don't have it with me, but I think, actually, on the ADF plant, I'm sorry, on the ADF plant, that's the one I couldn't find that quote. So, I don't know, Marty, did you meet them out there at ADF? I know you met them out at the Fritz.
Fritz I did, not ADF, he didn't have time to get ADF, so. Get anything, if he's got something.
Okay, I'll leave that on the agenda for next time then, if you can try to track down a new quote for that. Anything else about ADF from anyone else present? If not, moving on to the Dowdy Road building, we'll be able to get a cost on renting a lift to enable installation of rain handlers.
Timber supply rental out there on Highway 8, $350 a day.
Okay, do you have a guess on how long it might take to do that?
I guess I have to get with Marty a little bit, but, what do you think, a day or 2?
Well, let me back up just a little bit. My son-in-law stopped, last weekend and picked up a box of the rain handler. Which was, yeah, and it's like, okay, so I don't have 200 feet of it or anything else close. I know I had over 100 feet. I probably got 50 feet left, but I don't have a problem, and if you guys are comfortable putting it up, that's fine. We can get some more, but, I don't,
Do you know
I
what?
have as much as I have.
Do you know what another 150 feet would cost for the thing? Okay, can you check that out before the next meeting?
Yeah, I'll get with Gary, whatever works for you.
Thank you.
Measure and stuff, yeah.
Moving then from the Dowdy Road building to the Enterprise Center. Is there anything regarding, city administrator handed out a document that was essentially a request for proposal to occupy space? Did you get any replies to that, or are you looking for approval?
We were,
website, the county website, and the city would probably pay to run it in the Ladysmith News for a week or two.
Does anybody need a copy?
Pay per week, we'll pay per week.
Yeah, whatever works. And then, yeah, the backside is what I envision somebody filling out. And then, yeah, due date of
How big is it, yeah?
a little over 2,400 square feet.
2,400 square feet.
Then I put a due date of June 26th, which would be about a month out from today. Maybe that's excessive. Maybe we can expect people to turn it around in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, or maybe we wanna give them a couple months. But figured a month was probably a good placeholder. I also did mark on there, walkthrough for any interested parties, where I'd be there to open it up. Although 6/5 kinda seems a little early, cause there'd probably be only one insertion in the paper before that, but maybe that works. Could always put additional appointments by request or something. Any thoughts, any feedback?
Yeah, by the time you rent it out, will you have most of those other trailers moved out of there, or?
Hoping so. I don't know if Mr. Jones was able to look at any, and I know the county was maybe interested in a couple for storage for the highway shop, so I don't know if he's marked which ones he wants, but then we can put, probably put on a future agenda for the county board and the city council to just split interest, or, you know, county could give them all to the city could give them all to the county, whatever. I think between that, and I met with Terry Ducell out there too, and he named off a few other locals that might have interest, you know. He didn't think there was a ton of value to any of them, given their locked up brakes and just their general.
I think, didn't he say they aren't even roadworthy, right?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
said they basically were all not roadworthy.
Okay.
You can move them, you know, free up the brakes and move them a little bit down the road without catching much grief, but yeah, you're not gonna take them on big highway trips anymore.
Quick question, as long as we're on 120. Tony, did property talk with either Mike Crotto or Mike Olson from Marshfield Hospital about the garage out by the hospital?
Yes, Mike has contacted the county about that
How long ago?
months ago.
No, this was just from the last meeting, remember I came over, talked to you and Al about, and you said we'll get that on the property committee meeting, cause they're seriously interested in that garage, but if that's not gonna be available, then their second shot was 120. What was the bay that we're talking about?
My understanding is just, you got some vehicles in that garage now.
That I don't know what's going on. I'm just telling you that they're interested, and I said they've gotta talk with the property committee. Last time I talked to Mike Crotto.
Haven't contacted me, but someone mentioned to me that, vehicles stored in there, was being kept in.
From the sheriff's department?
No, it's our backup ambulance for Ladysmith and our ME van.
Okay. Well, I think that's all they wanted for us to keep their winter trucks and stuff like that in. And, I know they were interested in renting it out, or whatever, they didn't want it for free. So it would've been an option, it is an opportunity still, I think he said that's our first choice. So you could probably rent it for a year, whatever it takes to get everything in motion if you're gonna tear it down, which could be a good chunk of change. But if not, if you're not interested, or if you're using it for something else, then, I would probably talk to Mike about this one, you know. I don't have to do that if you're interested in it.
Something I could see if we got ambulance store up there, move them in the gates and rent it out, but I mean.
Yeah.
You
I don't
know,
know. I don't know about moving anything anywhere, because I didn't know there was anything out there. All I know is that they had called, because I've got a couple of Marshfield's other buildings, and they were interested in something, and so I said, well, I looked around, and then, he said, what are the chances we can still get into and I said, into that garage out there, and I said, I have no idea, I'll bring it up with, property and Al Rassack, and that's what I did. So I don't know what's out there now.
Nobody's contacted me about it anyway, so.
Well, no, I thought you were gonna contact him when, the last time I talked with you guys.
Well, I didn't,
Put it on property.
occupied,
Okay.
you know, until we, something decisions are made as far as, if you're gonna rent it out, you gotta replace, you know, the housing for the ambulance and AME van.
I'm not washing my hands of it, I'm just saying,
No, I
that whatever
understand
you
that.
guys decide, but if not, then I'm probably gonna talk to this one here and, so, anyhow. Just was wondering if you
That's where it's at.
put it on property.
I could put it on the property agenda.
No, I thought that was what you wanted. That's all right. Okay.
Probably be advisable just to have them respond to the RFP, either way.
Probably will, but by the same token, if the county can make a few $1,000 for sure, you know, 8, whatever, 10, whatever the number is, it would only make sense, I would think. I can call Mike and have him call you,
Yeah, that'd be fine.
whoever's running the show.
Alright.
Al, do you want a motion on this to get this going,
I guess it's not on there for action necessarily, but as long as there's no major objections, I'll just, put it out there and.
Okay.
Moving on to the Fritz Avenue plant then, here we talked, earlier in the meeting about doing the 2 mold remediation jobs as one. We have the quote in front of you for that work.
For the first one is, a total of $8,030.06.
How much for that?
$8,030.06.
I think that's the number that's part of the discussion, of what are they gonna do, who fixes whatever. If there's only, is this in the work area for the trucks, or where's the mold at?
In the office area.
In the bathroom or something, or just in the
In
office?
the bathroom, hallway area, their office area, the Liberty Roofing office area. Basically basically the front whole office, every room in the office.
And again, you will, monitor that work so that any corrective measures that need to be taken are at the same time.
Yep.
Is there a motion, to proceed with that work?
About $8,000 or, if we've approved that,
You approve the
April
library.
27th.
Right.
Is there one that we didn't approve that needs approval?
You approved the library. You never approved Fritz. No. Well, what I'm saying is that, I didn't have them do the library because they gave a quote for both of them to do it at the same time, otherwise it's gonna be more if they do it separate.
So, is anyone prepared to make a motion to do this remediation work at Fritz? This would also trigger completing the work at the library.
Want a motion to get going on, where's the funding coming from?
Have to do come out of the rent revenue account. Have to be offset against rent revenues from that facility, which I believe have been positive for a time now.
Well, it doesn't go away, so we're gonna make the motion, let's get it done and get it cleaned out.
Is there a second to Mr. Raven's motion?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Raven made a motion, Mr. Tater seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no? Motion carried. Does anyone have anything else relative to the Fritz Avenue plant? Mr. Reynolds, could I ask you just to comment somewhat on the heating system there and what you think we ought to be looking at going forward? hope so,
But what I had suggested earlier is that you've got a heating plant in there that's been there quite a while. There's a big boiler in there, and the boiler heats about 4 different entities right now. And those, in fact, maybe 5 if Dahlstrom has somebody else in their area. But most of the control valves, the zone valves and things like that are all stuck. They're stuck shut, they're stuck open. The boiler itself has got quite a bit of age on it. I guess my suggestion earlier on was that as we start leasing out these buildings, or these segments, that maybe what we wanna do is put individual heating systems in rather than running that one. That one boiler, the air handler runs year round. And the boiler itself runs quite a bit in the winter, and there's areas that aren't heated, but they're getting heated. They don't need to be heated. And I guess I'm thinking if we can do something that basically, the tenants in each section is responsible for their own rent and for their own heat, and air conditioning. I guess that just makes sense to me, especially when the time comes that, that big boiler has to be replaced. Some of those zone valves need to be reworked. There's no money for that. I mean, I don't know what the cash flow on the building is right now, but I've already talked to some people about putting some numbers together on what it's gonna cost, just to replace that main boiler, as opposed to doing separate heating units for each segment. I think it's something we need to think about.
I would agree with Marty on, you know, if you're renting some out, it'd be nice to have separate bills where you could just bill that all into your lease.
Yeah, and right now it's built into the leases, but it's a percentage of the total bill. And I'm just thinking that at some point in time, and so the tendency may be for someone to say, you know what, it's been really warm in here the last few days because the zone valves are stuck and the boiler's still running, so it's easier to open the window because the thermostat doesn't work. So the window gets opened up, and you get the cold air in, it cools it down a little bit, so it's not so hot. There are some days when it's 85 degrees in there because the zone valves are sticking open. Those all have to be replaced, rebuilt, whatever, and it might be a good idea, instead of doing that and running that big boiler all the time, just running a smaller boiler for each section and pay gas separately to it, or at least get metered separately, and let the tenant pay their own rental, or pay their own heating costs, sorry.
Gary, can you start having some conversations with vendors about getting together maybe proposals for, all of that work, actually?
I can tell you, Gary, I'm already working on it, so you and I can get together.
Yeah, I can do, like you said, them zone valves, them are expensive to replace.
Yeah, and they're a job because none of them have valves on them. So you can't drain the system or put new valves in.
We're having the same issue at Enterprise too.
I'm sure.
They had the same type of boiler they had at the Army Reserve Center. Remember what a mess we had?
Oh, that was a mess. That was
Well,
about
it
the same
isn't
size.
bad. This is,
Well,
I hope not.
no, but we kept it going.
Right, yeah.
It was around. Same with the elementary school.
Yeah.
Kept those going.
You almost had
But
to
the
sleep.
thing is, it starts to get expensive. And then when you start replacing parts as well as the main boiler having to be replaced, there's gotta be a better option because we don't have the money for that.
How old do you think that boiler is?
I'm sure it's original.
I would say,
It goes back to the early 90s. So it's 30 years old.
that's what I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, and, so number one, it's not efficient. Number two, the controls don't work much anymore. And number three, it's just totally inefficient. So I think it's time to at least start looking at what it's gonna cost.
Thank you. Moving on to the Gates building, does anyone have anything there to, bring before the committee?
I think you guys approved in the last meeting to get a quote for the mold out there too. I just got a picture, I just got one picture, but I'll show it to you guys. I don't think we really need to pay to get a quote or a sample. I just wanna show it to you guys, just so you can see what it is in this.
Bring out the pictures from,
Oh, yeah.
What's that on the floor?
Yes. That's the evidence, some evidence from it.
That in the office area, Gary?
In that back area that it used to be offices or whatever.
I think he was gonna say things they just take care of that.
Did you say your crew could take care of that, or were you looking for to provide a quote?
You know, we can, I guess we just got all fit tested yesterday for going into the building there. I would say now we could just, cause all that is sheet rock that just needs to be tore out, and, I mean, that's pretty bad, that's been like that for a whole
Well,
long
if you
time.
can, I suppose proceed if it turns out you can't bring it up at the next meeting.
And the same thing here is what happened, I think, at Fritz, is a condensation pump, took a crap and leaked down the wall.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else at Gates Avenue that anyone has?
I think, Gary, you kinda noted that, the ambulance and the medical examiner's van are now out of that newest section of Gates. I think all that's left there that the county owns are the animal shelter cages.
Yeah, I think the ME van might still be in Gates yet,
Okay.
I have to talk to Annette to get it out there, I know, yeah, as of yesterday, it wasn't in there, but, animal shelter, cages, I plan on putting them in the lower part of the Marshfield, garage there too. And that, so I'll have them out of there too, but, we didn't really wanna go in the building until we got fit tested yesterday, so next week we'll, get the rest of that out of there.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have any input, at item K relative to appraisals of property? We've had past discussions about how these can be useful going forward. If we're seriously thinking about selling properties, we need a starting point for discussion. I don't know that there's any action required today, but if anybody has any thoughts on that, if you wanna share, you're on.
Wait till you're done, I got just a second.
You want to go back to a previous item, right?
Yeah, wait till you're done.
I'm done with that unless anybody has.
Have we looked into the insurance on the mold issue? Because if you've got mold that's caused by, an accident, a water source, a pump that fails, as you say, or whatever, some of that, now the pump itself may not be covered, but the resultant acts should be. I think that's something that what we should probably be thinking about is getting somebody to come in here from the insurance company and say either yes or no. But if they'll cover it, and I guarantee you that they won't cover the pump, or they won't cover a roof or something, but the follow-up should be covered by the insurance. So, I don't know if anybody's looked at that or not. What's that? I know about mold necessarily, but damage from homes, from, toilet that ran too long and got whatever, from a, boiler that sprung a leak or whatever, so they covered it, they would cover the problem cost.
Yeah.
I just feel like it probably makes more sense for you to call, cause I need to know.
His emails were in my spam, so I didn't know
Oh,
if he was legit or not.
Oh, yeah, actually, and I actually just talked to him yesterday. Yeah, really nice.
Okay. Maybe next time we meet, we'll just talk. I would say,
it's starting to get close, I got surgery coming up, I think it's.
I'll go back.
Yeah, just as soon as you can do it.
Okay, will do.
Yuri, if I could go back to the library for just a minute.
Yeah.
We had that walkthrough over there and a number of contractors were there. Have any of them come back to you with any suggestion as to how that might, how the whole system could be improved?
We have appraisals done on the gates.
Yeah, I think,
Wait, yeah,
well, yeah, there's gonna be a big variance of quotes because there's no drawings or plans or anything, it was just,
Probably bit different things.
correct. And I told them, I just said to give us the easiest and the best fix that you would think, for it to be more user friendly and that, but, since there was no really no drawings or plans to go off of, I mean, that's all I had. And it's hard to look
Looking at what's there.
It's hard to put a RFP, you don't have drawings and plans and scope of work.
And I know there was one fellow who were talking to you that, and he looked like he might have had some other ideas of how that might work better.
That's what I had about a week and a half ago, I had a guy come, and I took him out there again, and he had some different ideas. So you're gonna get, I don't know, you say you get 4 or 5 quotes, it's gonna be all over the place, because.
Can you make sure their quotes are detailed enough so we can see what's different about each one?
Yep.
The best one probably won't be the cheapest one.
I would agree.
Ms. Heath has asked that I go back to the, agenda item on appraisal, she's got a comment to make on that.
thank you. So I just wanna say, I think appraising these buildings is a good idea, and if not all 3, at least the 501 Dowdy Road building, because I keep getting contacted by people interested in that building. And I think if we had an idea of what it's worth, we could approach the current tenant, we would have communication with the people interested in it, instead of just me shrugging my shoulders, and I'm sure Alan deals with the same thing. We don't really have a response for these people, because we literally have no idea how much this building is worth. So, just for your consideration.
You had the appraisal cost, didn't you, last time?
Yes. And they still do.
Okay.
And they come cheaper as a package if they're all done at the same time,
Right.
one at a time. I think we were looking on the 3 buildings without looking back at my notes, which are down there, roughly in the neighborhood of about $5,000 if all 3 are done.
Right.
What I passed out in the pink sheet back on, I believe it was April 12th, or thereabouts, I got a letter which you have there in pink, from County Chairman Rathsack, asking a few questions, and there was an attachment to that, which is on the reverse side. It's taken a little bit of time to, actually had this for the last meeting, but didn't get it on the agenda quick enough. A reply, I'm having eye trouble. I can't see it good enough to read it myself. So I've asked the city administrator to review the reply with you on my behalf. Take it away. And I think it's important enough, there were some fairly big issues raised, in my estimation. And I think they deserve answers, accurate answers. And so I've asked that he do what I was going to do, is read it to make sure everybody heard it. And so if you can proceed with that, and then ad lib if you need to, but make sure you cover the material in the letter.
Certainly. So, yeah, the chairman's words or the chairman's writing, I believe that part of the problem here in response to the letter is that management of these properties has evolved over time, but some of what has transpired has been lost sight of along the way. The first document that seems to provide a start is County Resolution 91-115. Key elements of that agreement include membership of the Joint Management Committee. That includes a non-voting member from the Ladysmith Community Industrial Development Corporation. I don't see this removed in any of the subsequent documents, which I believe modify this one. And a copy of that is attached on what is the second page, third page if you're counting from the back. In the next document, in chronological order, seems to be the City of Ladysmith Resolution number 96-11, adopted March 11th, 1996, which establishes the Fritz Avenue Joint Management Committee. Does Rusk County have a counterpart to this? Next is a memorandum of understanding dated January 2000, which stipulates how the Enterprise Center and Fritz Avenue plant projects will be managed. Next is a fairly comprehensive agreement dated 9/5/2003. In this one, the name of the committee is shortened to Joint Management Committee by eliminating the Fritz Avenue reference. Now, before I go on there, I do have a little ad-libbing and interjection on my own, having read the letter. In that letter from County Board Chair Rathsack, it states that a statement of cash flows for the last 5 years for all joint management properties, which is attached to the letter, shows a negative cash flow. Now, Jamie, and not putting you on the spot, but obviously as the finance director, you're aware of county numbers. Are these accurate numbers as far as you're aware?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Stated in Mr. Rathsack's letter that the city is responsible for 50% of the deficiency over the last 5 years, but has not reimbursed the county. Under that assumption, one would think it's fair to assume that if the city's responsible for 50% of the deficiencies, the city would also be entitled to 50% of the profits. That would stand to reason, I would think. In looking at the data provided by the county, it would seem to me that there is a profit in joint management over the last 5 years that are referenced in the letter and supporting documentation. You have that in front of you, it's also here. If you go to the far right column, labeled total profit or loss, loss being in parentheses, it shows profits in 2022, 2021, 2019, and 2018. There's a modest loss of less than $2,500 in 2020. Overall, over those 5 years which were referenced, the profits total up to $205,018.65, if I have my math correct. If that's the case, I can certainly wait around after the meeting for a check for the city for $102,509.33. What should also be taken into account is numerous county departments that have been occupying space in the Gates Avenue building without paying rent or their prorated share of building utilities. Before I go any further on with that, I will make it absolutely clear that this is by no means an attack on the Sheriff's Department, ambulance, medical examiner, or any other county departments occupying space. All of these departments play essential roles in our community. Emergency services equipment needs to be ready to roll the second it is needed. Law enforcement and medical services professionals do a job that I frankly don't have the guts to do, and I respect them tremendously. They need the space for their equipment, nobody can argue that. Manufacturing and warehousing space with high ceilings, loading docks, and improper ventilation for vehicle storage, however, is inappropriate for that use. To my knowledge, the carrying costs for this occupied space are currently being covered by the county mining fund. A fund meant for use for economic development activities, not for general government operations. This is a disservice to the public on many levels. First and foremost, it doesn't reflect the true yearly cost of these operations in their annual operating budgets. Secondly, it improperly reduces the balance of the county mining fund, thereby reducing the ability to carry out actual economic development efforts to grow our area. Counting just the area being used for sheriff storage, 22,500 square feet has been occupied rent-free for over 4 years. At our current market rate that we set a couple meetings back of $3 a square foot annually for 4 years, that comes out to $270,000 in rent we have not realized, which was solely to the county's benefit. $67,500 per year turns each of the last 5 years of losses at Gates Avenue into profits. That figure would increase the already positive cash flow over the last 5 years of $205,018.65 to $475,018.65. Even at $2 per square foot, $180,000 would be added to the already positive cash flows over the last 5 years. Neither of those figures take into account the prorated utilities that we charge the private sector in that same building. As confirmed by the sheriff at a previous meeting, city PD does occupy about 10% of that 22,500 square feet, so discount that if needed. The county property committee met on March 10th and made a motion to locate a new building for county storage that was approved. I have not seen any discussion or action from that committee since that meeting in the 2 months that have followed. Since the property has been occupied rent-free by the county, numerous inquiries have been made about that space from local manufacturers looking for space for warehousing or to add more production, and also from manufacturers outside the county with regional ties looking to do the same. They have been turned away or have found space elsewhere, including outside the county, costing us rent revenue and potential job growth. This is not the fault of the sheriff's department, but it is something that needs to be corrected. It makes no sense that the county would willingly forego rent income on a facility and then turn around and complain about that facility losing money when over 1/3 of it isn't collecting a cent because of unpaid occupancy that is being allowed to continue. With that, I will jump back into the chair's letter. Next is County Resolution 2008-24, adopted on August 25th, 2008. You may want to have the county clerk's office see if there is a counterpart or other related documentation on file from that same time frame. In any case, the prima facie evidence that was attached to the April 12th letter proves both city and county have, since adoption of that resolution, been following this modification. I'm sure if asked, Andy Alvarado would corroborate this. Resolution 2008-24 assigned revenues from all income producing JMC properties to the county to help the latter make debt payments on $3 million that the county borrowed for JMC projects specified in the resolution. Along with receiving all the revenues, Rusk County was also to cover all operating costs, including, I assume, legal fees. And if you do turn to Resolution 2008-24, the $3 million of borrowing that the county undertook was for construction of a new 20,000 square foot warehouse at 1402 Jez Road, construction of the Rusk Regional Transshipment Facility at Tony, Wisconsin, also known as the Tony Rail Yard, construction of an approximately 20,000 square foot connecting addition to link the two buildings at the Gates Avenue plant, making that one building, and remodeling of an existing warehouse at 501 Dowdy Road to convert it to a manufacturing facility. So with that resolution, the city essentially agreed to forego any revenues, even on development of a rail yard in Tony, which I believe I've seen a lady on Facebook saying, well, why would the city care about anything that the county does, or care about any communities outside of Ladysmith? I guess we must have cared quite a bit if we're willing to forego rent revenue to help pay for something in Tony. Probably because we realize that what's good for Tony is good for the county, is good for Ladysmith, is good for the rest of the communities. I'll quit ad-libbing and continue now. It is noteworthy that for years, the city did not receive any financial statements from the county in regard to these properties, despite asking for them pursuant to Article 10 of the 2003 agreement. I find some reconciliation exchanges with Marilyn Hoover from the early years, but none for several years after that. When they were requested, the stock answer given was to the effect that Andy hasn't gotten that information to us yet. I even have correspondence with Clifton Larson Allen staff indicating they didn't have the information, but would try to get it. Finally, after Kitsy Winters took over, she provided it, although even that was in a somewhat difficult to use format. Jamie Wilk has also provided information as of late. Also, all the joint management buildings profit loss statement shows losses for all but 1 year at Gates Avenue, for several years at the Forest Industry Park Building 2. My question is why, if they were being managed by the city, according to corporate counsel's research, did the city incur losses? Why was the city not collecting the rent and paying for the maintenance, attorney services, etc.? It also appears that the unpaid rent was listed as a loss. Is that correct? The answer, as I noted above, is the 2003 agreement the court counsel referred to was modified by other documents referenced above, copies of which are attached. That is why I anticipated court counsel would be amenable to providing the assistance I requested. If the county was managing these facilities as the financial records prove, where are the copies of the annual reports to the city? Please provide these. I have a few additional questions regarding puzzling numbers on the aforementioned profit loss statement as follows. This kind of mirrors some of my ad-libbed interjections. It is stated that in part 1, under your letter, that for the last 5 years there is a negative cash flow. Yet the summary column to the far right shows positive numbers in 17, 18, 19, 21, and 22, with a comparatively small loss in 2020. Does lack of any profit or loss under Enterprise Center for 1999 through 2006 indicate that it broke that even those years? City records indicate Forest Industrial Park Building 2 was built in 2008, although that needs to be verified. Why then are there profits and losses shown for the years 1995 through 1999 and neither for years 2000 through 06? And why are there, as the statement indicates, no records from 1997 when the older one, Building 1, was built until 2008? Forest Industry Park Building 1 wasn't even designed until 97, but costs shown for the Building 2 for 95 and 96 should be preliminary engineering for Building 1, and it seems the $273,000 loss for 1997 could reflect the construction cost. That still wouldn't explain the lack of any revenues or expenditures from 2000 to 08 for either Forest Industry Building 1 or 2. I also wonder why the statement didn't make any reference to the Conwed and North Weathershield Beechworth properties, which I believe worked out quite well for both city and county. They were sold, but on-time payments that were similar to lease payments. It is clear from the agreement that when it was approved in 9503, the JMC was also responsible for oversight of what was originally the Norse building located at 1100 Barnett Road. I'm quite sure that both county and city, along with the town of Grant and a couple loan funds operated by Northwest Regional Planning Commission, were all pretty much paid in full, such that all came out on this project. The same should have been true of the Conwed, later Owens Corning plant, that the county bought the city's interest out of prior to selling it to Henry Repeating Arms. And why weren't the Glen Flora and Weyerhaeuser buildings sold to 5R processors and Active Dogs listed? Why did the county not add these successful projects onto all the joint management buildings' profit and loss statement to paint a complete picture of how all these projects taken together worked out? The city, after all, not only conceived these projects, but assisted another involving the Rusk County Airport upgrades, writing the grant applications that the county was awarded over $2 million to construct them. Was this because showing that, all taken together, the county did come out, didn't fit the narrative desired, and that as remaining properties may be sold or leased on into the future, it will come out even better if these properties are properly kept up and managed? Minutes of the February 27th, 2020 meeting, which were attached to the April 12th, 2023 letter, do reference approval of HVAC work at Gates Avenue, but are incomplete in not indicating the nature of the work or the cost. That raises the question, if this work was to provide vehicle exhaust in that building, why didn't it happen? Did a vendor get paid to do it, but not do it? I'd suggest doing the following. Have the clerk's office, county clerk's office, review minutes from a couple JMC meetings before and after this one to see what light they can shed on this. Usually such discussions aren't dealt with at a single meeting. Second, Ask the auditor's office to locate any Gates Avenue HVAC invoices from this time period to verify the nature and cost of the work referenced. Absent further clarification, the minutes furnished don't tell me the work involved vehicle exhaust system insulation. The city is not adverse to considering the sale of some properties, as it has with most projects it undertook on its own prior to partnering with the county. See attachment. But will resist in selected cases where keeping them makes more sense. One of these, as I have noted, is the Fritz Avenue plant, where rock-solid tenants prefer to remain tenants. In such cases, a property exchange could be considered to transfer that property to the city in exchange for something of equal value. And that is all I have in this, there was something in this.
Any questions, comments, observations?
A lot to read through, Mr. Chairman. Maybe put that on the agenda for next month too. Maybe we take a look at it again. We take another look at it too.
I was not aware that this letter was sent to you, so.
Well, maybe I'll take it just a little bit further here. I was, not necessarily going to, but there's been a lot of attitude lately. Pretty damn negative attitude, and I for one am tired of it. And if you think you can push me around, you'll find that'll be the biggest mistake you ever made. And I wanna tell some of the county people who may not be aware of some of the history here, where I think the city of Ladysmith bent over backwards and shared hundreds of thousands of dollars, over $2 million, with the county that it would not have had to. We entered into mining projects that the city of Ladysmith received, carried out, and the county has borne the fruit of those. He ended up with ownership of the Conway building and sold it to Henry Repeating Arms. The city put that deal together with Conway. We could have very well just done it on its own. Then it would have been the city's building alone to sell to Henry Repeating Arms. But hell no, we tried to work with the county for 2 decades or longer, and they benefited from it, but it's never taken into account. So here's a few questions for county people who are present. And one of these I think was covered in the letter. Is the county aware that the city got the grant for the new hangar and terminal project at the airport, but allowed the county to take full ownership in those improvements? That happened, the record will prove it. Anybody that wants to see the record can come to my office. Is the county aware that it was the city's idea to seek mining funds to construct the satellite buildings in Glen Flora and Weyerhaeuser to make the benefit of mining county-wide? They were assisted, built, and sold to 5R and Active Dogs. It was hoped that similar buildings could be constructed in Sheldon and Hawkins, which never happened. Bruce built its own. Is the county aware that when artisans contacted the city about a site for its current plant, the city asked the firm if they'd prefer to stay in Glen Flora? They said yes, if they could. The city then laid out a plan for how that could happen, how a new industrial area could be built in Glen Flora. The city presented that to Northwest Regional Planning Commission, which got it done, and allowed artisans to remain in Glen Flora. Is the county aware that the first 2 years that the county had an economic development director, they were paid from a community-based economic development grant from the state of Wisconsin? The city wrote the grant application for that on behalf of the county in hopes that establishing the position would demonstrate the value of it. Some of you who have been here the longest might remember names like Ed Dano, Craig Molstead, Eric Johnson, Andy Alvarado. The job is still there, although it's been severely diluted because it's really a job that requires full-time. You can't just do it part-time. And lastly, since the county seems to have an issue with how the city uses tax increment dollars, is the county going to reimburse the city for the $568,000 of TIF the city used to raise the former Mount Seneca Fine Arts Center build West 10th Street South and other actions, which the city took about a decade ago, to create a site for a new hospital expansion. Not everybody in this room was aware of that, were you? But you should be. And you should hang your head in shame when you leave the room. Can I have a motion to go into closed session?
Make a motion to go in closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Mr. Raven?
Yes.
Mr. Kenyon?
Yes.
Mr. Tater?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Hauser?
Yes.
Okay, everybody, that isn't entitled to sit in on the closed session.
Return.
We adjourn for closed session, Aaron.
Keep that